Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded and we'll be sharing the recording with you afterwards. And then also in the chat section, there's a place for you to send any questions or messages or comments, and I'd be happy to address those questions after my demo and presentation. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Prioritization. Hopefully you're here today because you're interested in learning more about Prioritization and how it can help you be more productive and more efficient this year. So we'll be talking about the basics of Prioritization. This is meant to be introductory. So, no understanding of Prioritization prior to this is required. But for those who are, I'll be giving some tips and tricks on how to use the software to maximize your success as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So our goals for today, one, help you understand the basics of Matrix, the software, and how it integrates with various platforms. Provide you a framework, how to get the most out of it with the least work, because I think that's actually very important. I think there's just so many bells and whistles, but at the same time, you don't need any of those. You need very, very few capabilities to get a lot out of the system. And then help you envision what work and life success may look like with Matrix implemented. And then finally, to use Matrix to manage your 2024 goals. This is something that's top of mind for me. I've been, trying to hash out a lot of my goals for this year. And so thinking about how do I actually use Matrix to remind me to actually tackle those goals. So hopefully you'll feel the same way, and that when you walk out of today's webinar, you get a sense of excitement as to how to use Matrix to actually achieve the success that you want this year. There are three challenges that I see over and over again talking to thousands of customers. One, team members always have trouble understanding what's priority right now. It's a challenge that existed for a long time. And the reason that happens is because more so than ever before, everyone's got their own list, right? Everyone's got their own priorities. And a lot of time it's in their head. And so there's never that much alignment. And so team members really have a challenge understanding exactly what everyone is working on. And then secondly, it's getting harder to keep track on the status of work across many areas of responsibilities. So we no longer just have one task. Instead, we're juggling between these different projects, and a lot of time they have competing priorities. If you do this, you can't do that. So how do you decide what to work on? And how do you communicate to your manager or your colleagues? These are all the things that on your plate. It's a very, very important challenge. And then thirdly, emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. Ironically, over the last couple of years, I think we have so many more software that comes out for communication and chat and so forth, but it hasn't really helped with this context switching because you're still jumping back and forth. In fact, you get a delegation by email, and then you're walking down the hallway or in a meeting, and then you're getting some other task delegation or updates and so forth. And then you go back to your desk and that information isn't available. And so what happens is we have so many data sources as well. And so bringing it all together remains something that's extremely difficult. So if you face any of these challenges here, you're not alone. So what is Prioritization? Prioritization is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software. At the end of the day, it has three ways that helps. At the individual level, it helps you prioritize emails and tasks, right? Prioritization is just a simple communication tool that lets you put everything down, and you have one clear place to understand exactly what your priorities are at the individual level. But then when you take that and you decide to actually use Prioritization in a team environment and have everyone be on the system, it actually helps the team members understand exactly what everyone's priorities are. And so that helps everyone stay aligned on the key projects across your team. And then at the organizational level, as more teams adopt Prioritization within your organization, and then they use it together to all be on the same page, Prioritization create what's called a single source of truth that helps everyone be more efficient and more effective. One of the beauty of Prioritization is that it helps you update each other asynchronously. You don't have to be in the same room to know what each other's priorities are, right? And at the same time, someone's on leave, someone goes on vacation, or is no longer part of the company, and yet you still have an understanding of what were their priorities prior. And so that's the magic of Prioritization, where it actually is a communication tool that actually brings it all together and tackle the problems of priority management really, really well. So how does Priority Matrix help with those challenges that I mentioned? First, we use something called the 4-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. So I'll go into the details of the 4-quadrant methodology, but if you're not familiar with it, it's really, really powerful way to be on top of your key priorities. Secondly, Priority Matrix provide many different views, the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline, to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And to me, context is key. When you're working on a project, you want to know, what are my priorities for this project? When you're working with a coworker, what are the things I have to do for this coworker? Or when you're answering an email, what are the things that's relevant to this email? So Priority Matrix provides you information based on each of those contexts. And then thirdly, Priority Matrix provides deep integrations into systems you already use. In particular, we're probably the most integrated solution in the Microsoft Teams, Outlook, Office 365 ecosystem for effective email and task prioritization. So what makes Priority Matrix better is that we're a Microsoft 365 security certified solution. And we're the only one that I'm aware of that's Microsoft 365 security certified for Outlook, Teams, and web app. We're leveraging AI more and more to help you achieve your goals. Now, a lot of people don't care about AI, which totally makes sense. So from our perspective, we're not trying to actually force AI on anybody. Instead, we're just trying to intelligently identify ways to actually help you achieve your goals. And at the end of the day, you make the decision. And then Priority Matrix provide what I call people-centric collaboration. So we have different views that actually helps you flip the whole data structure around. And instead of looking at the tasks you have to do for a project, look at the tasks you have to do across all your projects, but with the people who you're working with in mind. And then lastly, Priority Matrix is available as a SaaS solution, which is what I'll be showing. But we also have a HIPAA version as well as an Azure government cloud solution, and then private enterprise deployment. So if some of these other solutions interest you, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to show you the capabilities and discuss those further. So what makes Priority Matrix effective is that it helps you determine what needs to be done now. And that's the key, right? It's not just about a to-do list where you have the long list and you're tracking everything. It helps you decide, okay, if I start my day today, where should I focus my time? What are things that actually requires my attention? And how do I ensure that the most important things are actually resurfaced up to me? And so I'll be showing you the capabilities in Priority Matrix that helps tackle those specifically. Priorities are constantly shifting, so Priority Matrix is designed to offer one place where everyone can go to know what needs to be done. And that's the goal. If you use Priority Matrix correctly, everyone on the team has one central place where you go there and you look at the projects, you look across all your projects, you know exactly what everyone's priorities are. And then when you have those discussions around what needs to be done, you can actually focus immediately on the key tasks. So let's talk about the fundamental behind Priority Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." What I really like about this quote is that it discusses how we think about the things that we have to do. Instead of having one long list of tasks that just keeps growing, right? What if you take those and you actually split them into the dimensions of importance and urgency? And one thing that's really interesting too is, this morning when you woke up and you check your email, right? What did you look at? What did you look first? You look at that last email typically, right? That's what's urgent, because that's the thing that's last in and therefore is first out. Was that the most important email? Likely not. But does it matter? Well, it's the last email, so that's what you check. And this happens to me too, which is we get pulled away from the most important task to look at things that are urgent, right? It's the shiny object syndrome. Oh, look over there, there's something I got to do. And so let's go look at it instead. And so what happens is that understanding that there's a difference between importance and urgency is one way for us to actually allocate our time better, allocate our resources better. So with this quote, instead of having a to-do list, right, where you're having one long list from the very top to the very bottom, you split them up into quadrants. And so in the top left, you have the things that are important and urgent. These are the do now. And then the important but not urgent, those are the things you start planning for. And then the urgent but not important are the things that perhaps you could delegate or you could postpone. And then finally, you have the inbox that captures everything that you have to do. And then from there, you split them, you put them into the appropriate quadrants. Now, what I really like about this framework is because it's so visual and it's so easy to understand where I need to focus my time. When I start my day, I look at the things in the top left. right? And only after I've exhausted looking at those and realizing, okay, these are things I should work on, these are things I shouldn't work on, and so forth, do I go to quadrant 2. And then from there, I look at the other stuff only later. Now, obviously you have to spend a little bit of your time organizing all of this. And that's the most important thing about Party Matrix. All it does is it's one central place for you to do this planning. And I would argue that's actually half the work. So many times we spend our resources working on things that don't matter, working on things that, again, are urgent but not important. And when I say important, what does it mean? It means, does it actually fulfill our goals? Whatever that goals might be. You have goals that you have to do for this week. You have goals that you have to do for this month, things that you want to achieve, like getting a promotion or ensuring that your clients are successful, et cetera. So from that perspective, that's how you should think about what things are important. And then urgency is just about what are the things I have to execute at this moment versus ones that I can actually delay and wait a little bit longer before I proceed. So the 4-quadrant Eisenhower Matrix creates alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. And that's the hardest part about Party Matrix. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because I think that is where the magic happens with Party Matrix, which is success from using Party Matrix isn't necessarily about finding what everyone agrees on. It's about discovering disagreement when things should be a priority but it isn't. And what happens is that if you do this simple activity, take a piece of paper, write down everything that you should do. But again, instead of writing in one long list, put it into the matrix, the 4 quadrants, right? And you say, okay, these are my critical tasks. These are the ones that I will work on next. And then ask all your coworkers to do the same exercise and walk around the office and start comparing notes. And that's when you'll start seeing all the discrepancy between all the things that each of you consider priorities and then disagree with others. And so when you use the Matrix software, what it does, it's a digital version of that, and it creates a constant alignment between every single person involved. At the individual level, it helps you understand what you need to do. At the team level, it ensures that everyone else understands what every other person is doing. And so when you have a discussion, when you have a meeting, you project Party Matrix on the big screen, and you can just walk through and talk about only the things that matter most. So I'm going to jump into the product, but I do want to mention that the webinars are recorded at affluence.com/webinars. And there, I actually also have other type of webinars that's more focused on specific things. For example, email management masterclass. So if you're interested in that, make sure you look up that recording, and then also using our template system and so forth. And so with that, I'm going to jump to the product. As mentioned, there's a chat section. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please send them there and I'd be happy to take a look. Okay, so now I'm going to open up my Party Matrix to show you on the screen here. So you should be able to see my screen, and front and center should be the 4 quadrants. And that's, again, the core of Party Matrix. As you can see, I have a project here called My Personal Priorities. And then right below that with the 4 quadrants, I have the do now, do later, delegate, and inbox, right? And so with Party Matrix, it is in some way a task management software, which means you add tasks to the system. You could add action items. Sometimes we call it items as opposed to task, but at the core of it, it's about the same. The reason why you might want to, call it items versus tasks is dependent on the kind of information that you want, because Party Matrix allowed you to put a lot more than just tasks. You can put emails, files, resources, and so forth. But let's start with the task. So imagine if this is my project, my personal priorities, and I'm going to go ahead and add a task. You see how as I hover over each quadrant, I have the option to add item here. And so I'm going to say email webinar participants. Okay. And you can see now I can type that as a task. But instead of actually just ending there, I would say due tomorrow 2 p.m. And now I'm going to go ahead and click add. And so what happens is when I create a task in Party Matrix, it will go create the task for me. But because I say due tomorrow at 2 p.m., it actually sets the due date for me automatically using natural language. So what that means is when you create a task, you could say due in 1 day, due in 1 week, due on February 2nd, etc. Now, when the task is created, the right-hand side is replaced with what's called the item details. Item details is where you can add additional information to the tasks themselves. And so let me give you some examples. first, at the very top here, it shows you what project it's in. So I can hover over this and move this task to another project if needed. I'm not gonna have to do that. There's a star. What starring does is actually says that this task is actually important. And when you press star, what happens is the task gets pinned to the top of each quadrant. So what that means is you might have multiple tasks in each quadrant that's star and pinned to the very top. And what's nice about that is it makes it very easy for you to get back to those tasks. So for me personally, I always have some star tasks, and that's just a way for me to get to them very, very rapidly. Below that, I have the icon, and so if I click on this, I can change the icon. But as you can see, because I said email webinar participants, it actually just put the icon email for me. So then when I look back in the quadrants, it's a little bit more visual. I can see what it is. And then there's owner. So you think of owner as the person responsible. Now, of course, this is a quote personal project, so maybe I don't have another owner, but I can actually click on this and delegate to another team member. So in a team environment, you would go create task and delegate it to the appropriate people. Now you can see that now that I've assigned it to somebody, my name is still next to it, right? My avatar is still next to it. And what happens is that I'm now a follower of the task. There can only be one owner, but you can have multiple followers. The idea of following is that when that task gets updated, gets modified, you get notification. Let me give you an example why you want to be a follower. Imagine if you're a manager and you have multiple direct reports working on so many different things. You assign them a task. Now, during that process, maybe the task will be over the next week or two. As they update it, or if they have questions around it, they can respond to the task and you'd get notified. So then you can go back and actually answer those responses. It's just a way to ensure that everyone who's a follower of a task is properly updated. And then at the same time, you can remove yourself as a follower if you're no longer interested in following that. So of course, when you create a task and you delegate, you're automatically a follower. And then next to that, you can have progress, 0 to 100%. Effort, essentially it's a way to saying, oh, okay, this task will take half a day, this task will take an hour, 2 hours, etc., because not all tasks are created equal. Now, you might want to use effort if you're really interested in workload management. So Matrix actually generate reports for you to show you how overwhelmed or how much work each person has. So it's very, very useful if you're trying to ensure that your team members aren't overloaded. If you're assigning them 60 work hours worth of work in a 40-hour work week, that's going to be very challenging for them to accomplish, right? You can't add more to that. So that's when you use effort. Completely optional, not necessary. And then you have due dates and reminders. And this is something that's really important. So I'm going to go into more details. You see how I actually set a due date, because earlier I typed the natural language, but then I can click on this, I can change the due date and so forth. Obviously, I can make it recurring, I can change the day, the time, I can make it all day, etc. But there's reminders as well. So with the reminders, what I can do is I can actually say, remind me on a certain date at a certain time for this task, even though that might be different from the due date. Let me give you an example. Tax is coming up. So if you wait until April 15th to do your taxes, right, you're not going to get that done. So then you might set a due date on April 15th, but then you say, remind me 1 month prior to that. So then a month prior to that, you actually get a reminder that says, okay, you should start working on this. Let me give you an example of how I use it. So let's say I have a customer that I want to follow up, this happens literally every single day. I would go and I would set a due date and would say due in 1 week, right? And then afterwards, I would set a weekly reminder. So let me show you how I do that. Down here in the chat section, I can say remind me weekly. So now what I've just done, you see how this turned green? What happens is our system, again, uses natural language to actually set the reminders for me. Now, on a weekly basis, I'll get a reminder for this task. And so when I have something that's truly important, I don't just set a reminder, I set recurring reminder. You could type things like remind me daily, remind me weekly, remind me monthly, remind me in 11 months, remind me in a year. And so when I have to follow up with somebody in a year, I always set the reminders at like a month prior to that. And I've never dropped important tasks because of that. Now, here's another trick. I love recurring reminders for things that are truly important. Here's the reason why. What happens when I told you earlier about when you started your day and what did you do? You check your email, right? And you look at the very top. That's the last email that came in. Well, that's just our natural tendency as human beings to be attracted to things that are urgent. And so by setting recurring reminders, what happens is it pops back to the top of your list constantly. And therefore, if something is truly important, you're hacking the system, hacking your brain by actually ensuring that it also adheres to this urgency aspect. So things that are important, I do that. So what happens is I'll show you how to get to the notifications in Party Matrix, but when you clear notifications for the recurring tasks, they'll come back over and over again. Next to that, you have tags, and so that's just a way to organize information, completely optional. And then below that, you have the ability to add in the chat section. This is where you can communicate to others within the context of the task itself. Now, let me give you a reason why you might want to use a chat inside Party Matrix. One of the biggest challenges that people have when they come to communication about different things is the lack of the context and also constantly switching context. So how often has it been when you in a Teams, Microsoft Teams chat, and you're talking to your manager and you talk about 3 or 4 different things at the same time? Then later on in a month or two, you go back and say, what did we talk about? What did we say we were going to do for that task again? You don't have one central place to organize that conversation. So the way it works with Party Matrix is you have a chat on a per item basis. And this is where you can have that meaningful conversation. And then secondly, when in like a month or 6 months or something like that, you need to invite in a new team member that can actually join the conversation and see exactly the full history of everything that's been said, as well as all the changes to the task itself. So as you can see, there's a record of all these changes. So due dates are changed, priorities are changed, assignments are changed. And that gives you so much visibility and transparency, especially for those who need to be introduced to an existing task. And then afterwards, you have notes. This is where you can add subtasks. You can also add just bullets as well as basic information. Again, it's not intended to be, a full-fledged doc or, Microsoft Word document or Google Doc or whatever. If you have those, you can attach it to Party Matrix instead in the resources section. So here you can upload files, maybe PowerPoints, maybe other documents, but also you can attach links. And so examples of links might be your SharePoint link, or you can actually link to other application that's on the web or websites, etc., all from here. Now, one of the cool things about Party Matrix, and one of the reasons why people come to Party Matrix, is email management. So what that means is Party Matrix allows you to turn an email into a task, prioritize the email, and delegate that email. So the resources section can actually also include emails. Let me give you some examples. Let's just say if you're working with an external client and that client actually sends you an email, and now you need to ensure that someone responds to that email and also maybe execute on the task in there. So by using Party Matrix, you can actually convert those emails into tasks directly, assign it, and that email is attached here in the resources section. And then what's nice about it is that other coworkers, right, can come in, open that email, and respond to it as needed. I'm sure that many of you work across teams that are cross-functional, right? You might have sales, but you might have customer success, you might have engineering, all of these folks involved in one central place. Forwarding the email around is just a disaster. So instead, by using Party Matrix, you can actually have all those emails in one central place and everyone's still on the same page. All right, so that's the item details. Now, as you can see, there's a lot more information that I sort of skipped, but that's the reason that you don't need to know all of those things to use Party Matrix. In fact, I would argue that if you were creating tasks in Party Matrix, there's 3 features that you must use, in my opinion: due dates, reminders, and then starring if needed. Okay, so those are the basic capabilities where if you do that, you'll be on top of all your tasks. Now, it's obvious to say that when you create a task, you should put them in the appropriate quadrants. And if you did put in the wrong quadrants, everything's just drag and drop. What that means is you need to reprioritize, just bring them back to different places. The whole goal is that when you start your day and you look at this matrix, you know exactly where you should focus your time, Q1, right? And as you can see, there's a whole record of all of this. So that's the basics of a task, and that's the basics of the inside of a quadrant. Now let's talk about the concept of projects themselves. As you can see on my left-hand side here, I have my list of projects. So I have maybe several dozens here. Now in my real work account, I have around 300 projects or so. Party Matrix does an amazing job of helping you manage 300 projects without being overwhelmed. First of all, you can see that in my list of projects, I actually, when I choose a project, now, if I click on a project, the right-hand side switches and it showed me what's called the project details. So you saw the item details. Project details is the place where you can modify the project themselves. You can click on here and change the project name. You can star the project, which push it to the very top of the list. You can decide who are the team members in this project. The way it works from a permission standpoint is that if someone is part of the project, they can see all those tasks, right? And so you might have a team project with all your coworkers. You might have a department project. You might have a project with just 2 or 3 team members in it, and you might have a project that's just for yourself. And so below that, you actually have the quadrant names. You can click on here and change the quadrant name. You can even change the color. So I like the color coding for various use cases. So for example, you might want to organize certain information in certain specific ways. So maybe all the blue represents a category of projects. It could be outward facing projects, etc. And then you can change the quadrant name as needed. Now, we typically use the Eisenhower Matrix as the basis, but what's neat is that Matrix has hundreds of templates that you can use for free when you create projects, and you can actually change it to all these different terminology depending on your use case. So some examples: effort impact, right? Instead of saying do now, you said, what are the tasks that are low effort and high impact? That's the equivalent of your important and urgent, because those are the things you should work on first. Low effort, high impact, and then high effort, high impact, right? And so on and so on. So Matrix gives you a lot of customization when it comes to that. So that's related to project details. Now, one neat thing is that if you customize a project and you want to make sure that other people can actually use it as well, because, again, at your organization, maybe you come to a few terminology that you really like, you can actually go up here in the menu up here and save that project as template. So if you have a specific terminology that you use and color design that you like, once you save that as a template, when you launch a new project in Matrix, you can choose one of those templates instead. Now, here's the cool part with templates. What happens is that if you have a template with task and your tasks have due dates and you save it as a template, you can actually automate the whole process of creating new tasks. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if I have a project that's called Employee Training Handbook, right? And then you in HR have a series of tasks that you create that whenever you onboard a new employee, they have to go through various training processes and so forth. You can go and create a project in Matrix with all those tasks and then set the due date, due in 1 day, due in 1 week, etc. Then you save that as a template. Now, when a new employee comes in and you launch a project from template, Matrix will automatically create all those tasks, set all those due dates from the start date for you. It's really cool. Now, I have that webinar on templates on how to set that up specifically. So if you're interested, make sure you search for that webinar or reach out to me and I'd be happy to send you the link to that webinar. That's a really powerful use case for employee onboarding, for client onboarding, or for repetitive tasks. So if you have quarterly tasks that you have to do over and over again, that's a perfect use case for those Matrix templates. Okay, so that's how you create a project, and that's how you customize a project. And then again, that's how you can actually create the task and so forth. So my recommendation when you start Matrix the very first time is you should create at least 3 projects. You should have a personal priority project, right? These are the tasks that you care about. You should have a team priority project. These are the tasks that you have with your coworkers, so then everyone can go there and have one central place for priorities. And then you should have a project for either some initiative or goals that you have for this month or this quarter. The reason why I recommend that last one is so then you would actually get, you come back into Matrix and actually use it, and then you'll see that you're actually working on the things that truly matters. You can keep a lot of things in your head. A lot of people do that. And you can also write it down on pieces of paper and throw it across your desk. A lot of people do that. I've done that. I still do that sometimes, because sometimes that's what you want to do, is just get it out of your head. The whole goal of Matrix, though, is to actually have it in one central place, so then you can keep on building up your repository of information and then ensuring that you don't forget the things that are important. Because if you stop using Matrix for 2 weeks and you come back, you're like, oh, hey, I see what all my priorities are. Did they change? Did anything happen while I was away for 2 weeks, right? It's so useful from that perspective. Helps everyone stay on the same page. An extremely way to be transparent with across the whole organization. So those are the 3 that I recommend, the 3 projects. I also personally created a project called Goals for 2024. And this is the terminology name that I use. My long-term goals, short-term goals, things I will not do, as well as ideas. So if you want, go ahead and copy my approach here. But what I like about that is I just set my goals here. And then, for example, I'm just going to say, read a book, right? Monthly. And go ahead and create a task like that. So imagine if that's one of my goals. And then what happens is I'll just say, remind me monthly. And so now on a monthly basis, Party Matrix will remind me, hey, go read a book, read a new book that, whatever it is, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do the exact same thing. I really like reminders for setting your goals, because that's the reason why people forget to do their goals, is because they write it down and they forget about it, right? They don't go back to it. And so having the system bug you over and over again is a very effective way to ensure that you actually work on those things. So now let's talk about these notifications that I mentioned. So on the left-hand side here, you see a couple of other menu items. We won't go through all of it, but the most important one is home. So home is where you start your day. So when I start my day in Party Matrix, I go to the home view first and see what are the things that requires my attention. So these are called alerts. And so that number right there is equivalent to alerts. And alerts are just tasks that is relevant to me. So how does it define relevance? Either you've been assigned a task, right? Let's just say overnight, your coworker assigned you a task, or a task that you follow has been updated, or there's a reminder or a due date that triggered. So it pops up here. And so your goal is, as you click through each of these, you can see them on the right-hand side and ensure that you're actually working on them. Once in a while, you want to go and you want to clear all notifications, which you can go do like that, just like that. Everything goes away. And then if notifications come back, they'll pop back up here again. And that is where the reminders, the recurring reminders, are so powerful. Because when I have a recurring reminder, let's say something daily or weekly or something like that, even when I clear my alerts, next week it triggers and it shows up again, right? And so again, when I have a really important customer that I need to follow up with, or really important email that I need to address, it always shows up for me. So that's how you use the alert system. As you can see, Party Matrix has multiple other views. You can go to the agenda. You can see all the things that you have to do this week. And then you have the My Items. These are all the tasks you have across all your projects. And then, of course, Party Matrix has multiple other views as well. So on the left-hand side here, you can see we have calendar view, we have search view, which is a place where you can actually go and filter things. For example, if I go to search view here, I can actually click on filters and see what are all the things that I've done over the past quarter, right? If you're doing your performance review, you can go here, build a report of all the tasks you finished over the past 3 months, and able to share that with your manager extremely easily. Well, in fact, your manager can actually run the same report by using Party Matrix for all those tasks that you work together on. So while the 4-quadrant is a main view, we actually have a lot of other ways to look at the information as well. So let me go and show you, let's just say that I have a project here, right? So you see how the 4 quadrants is front and center, but Party Matrix also has other views that you can click on and look at the information from a different perspective. So for example, the list view takes all the information that you have and put in a list view. I can still see the quadrants, but now I can actually see the tasks that are due and modified very easily. I like this view to easily identify things that are recently changed across all 4 quadrants, and then also identifying things that are overdue. You can see how things that are overdue actually turn red. It's very, very easy to find that information. Then you have the calendar view. So this is where any tasks that have due dates would show up. And so you can click on those tasks. You can drag and drop them around as needed. So for example, I can click on this and open the task. I can actually change the due date just by dragging and dropping. So if your day, you are calendar centric, some people are, and you're just trying to organize your information from the perspective of time, that's what you go to. And then you have what's called the Gantt chart view. And so this is equivalent of a timeline. So this is useful if you want to see how your tasks are across longer period of time than just like a week, right? The calendar view is pretty good for a week or a month, but the Gantt chart view is good for seeing multi-quarters, etc. Again, it's the same information. Party Matrix just goes and build out these reports for you. So then if you're a project manager, you can take a snapshot of this and put in your presentation without having to do any additional work. And then we have other views that includes the ability to see all the changes across the projects, sort of like a Facebook feed, and then we actually have reporting on these tasks as well. So now I'm going to switch gear a little bit and talk about email management, because as I mentioned, that's probably the #1 reason why customers come to Party Matrix in order to actually prioritize their emails. So here I have Outlook open. So as an example, I just have a random email open here. Imagine I got an email that says, I need a quote for XYZ. With Party Matrix, you can actually install the Party Matrix for Outlook plugin. So if you go to this, let's see here. Oh, that's actually for some, let me refresh my screen here. I can see that this email has already been prioritized. Okay, there we go. So now I have the option here to open apps. So if you don't have this installed already, click on add apps and search for Matrix. And then I, of course, have Matrix installed here. I can click on Matrix and I have the option to prioritize email. So what happens now is when I have an email that comes in, instead of actually just flagging it, right, which I do sometimes, instead of flagging it where, you know, if I have 5 flag emails, that's fine. If I have 50 flag emails, I have trouble understanding what I need to work on. So instead, I can actually take this email and create a task in Matrix. I have the option here to capture the email. And so what it does is it takes the subject, create a task name. I can choose what project it belongs in. So because it's asking for a quote, maybe I'll put in the project sales pipeline. I can choose what quadrants, and I can assign to people, and I set a due date. This is so useful when you need to ensure that the most critical emails are responded to. Because you're setting due dates, because you're prioritizing the emails, everyone's on the same page, right? And so what that allows let's say if you're a salesperson and you want to make sure that somebody else is processing the invoice or whatever, by doing this, you can ensure that they actually work on those tasks. And because there's actually due dates and delegation and called out responsibility. But here's the cool thing about Matrix, which is it actually also helps you identify the duplicated task from this email as well. So if multiple coworkers are CC'd an email and they create a task, well, we try to identify and make sure that you don't create those duplicate tasks. But here's another unique feature of Matrix, which is the ability for you to attach the email to existing tasks. Sometimes it's just a follow-up. So instead of actually choosing prioritize email, I open up Matrix, and now you have a different view that pops up. And this allows me to actually attach email to an existing task. So you can see that I can actually search for a Matrix task and then attach it directly here. So this is really useful if you have, you know, a customer, again, that's following up on an existing task and you want to ensure that everyone's on the same page. You can't do this with a regular email system, right? If you have an email in one place and then a customer send another email instead of replying to the thread, now you're forwarding that email to people or you're CCing a bunch of people. Now you just have multiple places where everything is completely disorganized. So with Matrix, you can actually bring all of those together into one central place and ensures that the email are prioritized. And then when you prioritize the email, you actually attach them as an EML file, so then your coworker can actually open it. And if you click on this menu option here and go to settings, you can actually choose sort of your preferences on whether or not to attach those emails as needed. Now, what's really neat is Matrix is also what's called a universal app. So I can actually go to Outlook itself and click on Matrix. Again, I can install Matrix here, and I can access Matrix inside Outlook. I don't even have to go to the web app. So what's really neat is that you can actually do this, pin Matrix here, and now you can be 100% inside Outlook, have everything you need with Matrix in one central place. And so you can see how when I go to this view, I can actually add as one of these views here inside Outlook, and this works across Outlook 365. I can jump back to my email, I can jump back to Matrix, and that is where we add value by reducing your context switching. And speaking of context switching, Matrix work completely inside Microsoft Teams as well. So what happens is you can go to the App Store inside Microsoft Teams, install Matrix, and then you can pin Matrix here. When I click on Matrix, it allows me to access everything you saw in the web app. You can see my list of projects, my quadrants, and then the item details and so forth. And then the menus is right up here. I have one central place, and I don't even have to go to Matrix web app as well. Do note that if you like desktop apps, Matrix comes with desktop apps, so you can actually install those. But let me show you a couple more things that's unique to Microsoft Teams that makes Matrix one of the most integrated systems in Teams. When you go to a chat with somebody in Microsoft Teams, you can actually go to what's called the one-on-one view. So here I click on PM one-on-one, and look at this. It shows me every single task I have in common with my coworker directly in the conversation that I have with them. And so as you can see, if you were a manager and you have 5 or 6 direct reports, how often had you had that question? It was like, hey, what is so-and-so working on? Or when you have a conversation with them, you're wondering, hey, what's the status of that task that I assigned to you, right? Well, you don't have to wonder anymore. When you go to here, you can add the one-on-one for every single person. And then when you open that view within the chat with that person, you can see all the tasks you have in common with them across all your projects. So the criteria for showing up here simply is that you and that person are either owner or follower of the same task. And as you can see everything that's overdue, the things that are modified. So when you have a meeting with that person, it is so easy to be able to discuss the things that are actually happening, right? You can say, hey, let's talk about that task that's overdue, or let's talk about that particular XYZ, and you can filter it directly from here and find out exactly the status of the things that's happening right now. The other neat thing is the ability for you to actually add share tasks directly from this view. This is very useful for the use case where you're having a meeting and then you're talking to each other and then you realize, hey, let's do XYZ. Instead of having to open Matrix and creating the task and all that, you click on Add Share Task, type it in. You can set the due date directly from the task name, and you click Add, automatically assigns to the other person, automatically add you as a follower. Can't be any simpler than that. So Matrix provide that deep integrations that makes it so easy for you to use without context switching. You can add the tab by simply click on this plus and then choose Matrix and then choose the one-on-one here. As you can see, I have other options to add Matrix, including integrating projects into teams. But at the same time, if I go to the chat section here, inside a conversation with somebody, you can actually turn any conversation into a task itself. So you click on this ellipsis, create PM item, and voila, a task is created. It links back to that moment in time when you had that conversation, creating one central place for you to actually track all these things that you are going to do. You can see from my examples here, I have a bunch of action cards that I sent. I can actually click on here, click on Matrix, and send action cards. An example of why I would send an action card might be I would assign someone a task, but then they didn't get to it for whatever reason, right? And so with Matrix, you can actually send them the action card in Teams, so they can actually see the task, they can open it, update it, etc., directly from Teams. So we actually have other integrations in Teams as well into the calendar. We also, if you go to the App Store and you search for Matrix, you can actually see Matrix under workflows, and also Matrix is one of the very, very few applications that works with Copilot. So what's really neat is that Matrix actually at the enterprise level, Matrix will accelerate how you use our system across the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So if those are the things that interest you, some of those are enterprise features, of course, reach out to us and we'd be happy to actually show you how to use this to the next level. So that's how Matrix integrates with Teams. Again, there's more capabilities there, including integration with meetings. We also have integrations with Microsoft Edge, Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, Gmail, etc. So those are other things you can pull in. We also have connectors that lets you pull in To-Do, Jira, et cetera, Outlook tasks, and so forth into your Matrix as read-only. So those are additional options that we have within the Microsoft ecosystem. Okay, with that, I'm going to jump back to my presentation. All right, so it's now on you. Hopefully I've given you a very high level overview of Matrix. Now, of course, you can see how Matrix has a lot of capabilities, but again, you don't have to boil the ocean with Matrix. At the end of the day, it's just a simple way to put all your tasks together into the 4 quadrants. But the nice thing is Matrix has all the bells and whistles for you to take it to whatever levels that you want. So if you haven't already, sign up for Matrix. If you use Teams and Outlook, you definitely should do those things that I showed you. Add Matrix in Teams, add Matrix in Outlook, add Matrix web app, the universal app in Outlook as well. I would create at least 3 projects, your personal priorities, your shared team priorities, and key initiatives. Again, if you have goals for 2024, definitely write it down. I mean, if you don't write it down, how would you get them done, right? And then make sure that you set those recurring reminders. For team projects, invite the appropriate team members and pitch to them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. One thing that I find to be really interesting is that, for people here today, all of you, you're here because you're taking the initiative. And that's the amazing thing, is that it boils down to the individuals who take the initiative, who's trying to be more productive and more efficient and so forth. So kudos to you on that first part. The second is that team members sort of need the same motivation, but they actually requires a little bit more pushing from you and from others and so forth. So if you're talking to your manager, I mean, when you show them how, if they can take a look and know exactly what you're working on, How valuable is that? And then also imagine if you're at the director or executive level and you have full visibility on the priorities across your entire department. How valuable is that? Right. And so, and then actually at the same time, if you're a contributor, individual contributor, being able to actually track all your priorities and then show others or your managers that, hey, I'm overloaded. I have a ton of work on my plate, and these are my priorities. If you're assigning me something, what am I going to get rid of? Being able to have those meaningful conversations is so powerful, and Party Matrix really facilitates that. When you create tasks in Party Matrix, make sure you set due dates, put them in the appropriate quadrants, and don't drop them. That's pretty much it. That's all you have to do to actually mark them as done. And when you mark them as done, Party Matrix will track all those statistics for you. And later on, you can see, okay, how long does it take me to actually get some of my tasks done and so forth. And then lastly, ruthlessly prioritize. And what I mean by that is the time is yours, right? If you don't ruthlessly prioritize your time, someone else will. So some advice, if you're really new to Party Matrix, use it to track high impact tasks first. These are the things that truly matters. I wouldn't write your grocery list in Party Matrix, for example. Use Party Matrix as a communication tool with your manager and team members. Like I mentioned, I've seen amazing successes when customers project Party Matrix on the big screen. When they're in the team meeting room and they have that on the big screen, everyone can look at it and it's like, okay, I agree, I disagree, etc. And instead of having a meeting that talks about random stuff, you're talking about the most important things in quadrant 1 first, right? Then you move to quadrant 2 and so forth. And then I think that, using Party Matrix to manage your individual goals is so critical, because Party Matrix at the end of the day is an individual, a tool where our root starts at the individual, right? Because if we can help you be successful, then nothing else matters, whether or not using it your team or your organization, that's secondary. But if you're successful, then we've done our job. So what success with Party Matrix should look like: you have one central place to track all your priorities. Everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. If you have repetitive procedures, templatize them like I showed you. And then if you have important emails, prioritize them and triage them to the proper team members, and make sure you never forget them. And that's pretty much it. So with that, I conclude my presentation and demo here. I'm going to take a look at the chat to see if there's any questions. If there are, I'll address them. Thank you. Okay, so I see quite a number of questions. I also see that a colleague of mine has also started answering these questions as well. So let's see here. So someone asked whether or not this works on the Mac ecosystem. In fact, I'm on Mac. Party Matrix works on iOS. We have iOS app, we have Mac app, we have integrations if you're on iOS. I believe integration with Safari as well. And then with Party Matrix, if you want to prioritize email, you can actually forward email from Apple Mail. In fact, on my phone, I have Apple Mail. So when I get an email, every account, every person inside Party Matrix actually has an inbox address. And so with that inbox address, you can actually set it up in Apple Mail. So when you have an email, you can actually forward it to your inbox address and it shows up in Party Matrix. And you can set due dates, reminders directly from that forwarding. So actually, Party Matrix works extremely well on Mac. In fact, Party Matrix started first on the Mac ecosystem, and there's native Mac app that you can install as well. The site for the webinars, affluence.com/webinars. So I believe that my colleague responds to you there. But if you want to see the other webinars, it's all available there. In terms of documentation for the natural language, we actually have a list of commands as well. So actually, I believe that, let me see here if someone sent to you in the chat already. But essentially, you can go and type things like remind me or due date or move task and so forth. So we actually have a command there. If you want, please reach out to us and we'll send you the link for it. But when you're using Party Matrix inside, let me show you back here again. When you're creating a new task, for example, let's see here. I'm trying to find an example because actually sometimes what we do is we actually there actually is a command thing that pops up that actually tells you what are the commands that you can type. But we actually have a page, help page dedicated to that. This webinar is recorded, and so I'll be sending out this to you afterwards. Can I assign dependencies? Yes, let me show you how to create dependencies. It's actually very easy in Product Matrix. When you go to a task, you can click on the resources section, and then what you can do is you can link existing item. So let's just say if you're doing a construction project, right? You got to pour the foundation. Before you do the next part, you can actually go click on link existing task, and then you can choose another task within the matrix itself, and then you can choose several types of dependencies. So for example, first it's related. When you say two tasks are related, it just means that they're interlinked with each other, and so in our system, we mark that you can actually jump back and forth between these. But you can also say that this task is blocked by, or this task blocks, or this task is caused by, or this task causes. And so when you use those specific categories, then it actually builds the dependencies inside the Gantt chart. As an individual contributor, can I see all the tasks that I have across all my project? That's a fantastic question. The answer is actually yes. So there's several ways for you to do that. If you go to the home view here, if you click on agenda, essentially it shows you all the tasks you have, anything with due dates across all your projects, right? So this is a time-centric view. So instead of thinking about importance view, important centric view, you have a time centric view. And so here it shows you all those tasks with those due dates. But you can also click on my items. And what this does is it shows you all items you have across all your project in one central place. And so from here, it's very easy to be able to see everything that you have to do. But also you can actually use the search function to find things across everything. So when you go to the search function here, you can click on filter, and you can say, show me all the items that are unfinished from quadrant 1, right? Assigned to so-and-so, myself, if needed, or you can say items that I follow. And then you can also choose additional time span as well. So in fact, we actually have several preset filters for you here. So when you open the search view, you can just click on one of these, and that pretty much allows you to jump to the view that allows you to see everything you need to see. In the old Windows app, we used to call this the master view, but this, you can think of this as one central place for you to search for whatever that you need. Okay, so it looks like my colleague did send a link to the command page there. So if you go there, you'll see a bunch of different commands. Okay. So you can actually save it. So you can actually create a custom filter right here, and then you can save the filter as whatever name you want to save it. So for example, you might create a filter that says my item from Q1 or something like that, right? In fact, it's pretty useful too. If you're a manager, you can actually create a filter that shows you the work done by certain team members as well. So you can go and create each of those various filters, and all you have to do is create a custom filter here and then save the filter for whatever name that is. And so when you click on that, those filters will be activated here in the search view. So that's a very good question. Fantastic. These are fantastic questions, and thank you for asking them. I want to make sure that you know that you can always reach out to us. My email, hi@affluence.com or support@affluence.com. One of the things that we are trying to do is we want to make sure that Product Matrix works well, not just for anyone, but for you in particular. And I say that in actually not in jest, but actually in all seriousness, which is I think that Product Matrix, and with the advance of AI, we can actually go and customize Product Matrix to your specific needs. So whatever your job function, your job title in your specific industry. So that's one of the areas where we're investing a lot of effort and time. So please reach out to us if you're looking to deploy Product Matrix with your team or your organization, and we can actually provide you a wealth of resources to actually help you be successful for that specific purpose. So the workload tracking, let me show you how that works. So here, when I go to reports, I can actually do workload management. And so if you're a manager and you have multiple team members, you can actually go to this view and you can actually see the workload of your coworkers across all these, across various weeks and so forth. So for example, I can choose the date, and here you can see how the count here represents the number of tasks for that person. but you can also switch over to effort or schedule hours. So earlier I mentioned how with each task you can associate effort. So when you create a task in Matrix, it automatically counts as 1 hour. Now, if obviously not all tasks are created equal. So if you wanted to use it to be more fine grained, then you can actually set those efforts. And then when you go to this view, you can actually change the effort there. We also have other reporting systems. So what happens is when you go to a general report, you can actually get quarterly reports, daily report, weekly reports, and you can schedule this, but this is more on a personal level. Whereas if you want a team level, the workload report that I show is pretty helpful. And also the search view is tremendously helpful. Fantastic questions. All right. Thank you all so much for being here today. I hope this was helpful. I hope this inspire you a little bit to be more effective and more efficient, and hopefully Matrix will be able to help you with that journey. Thank you all.